This episode of Snack Size is brought to you by Snacks by Lala. Elevate your look with bold, long-lasting matte lipsticks and dazzling lip glosses. Whether you're on stage or on the go, Snacks by Lala delivers stunning color that lasts all day. Visit www.snacksbylala.com and treat yourself to a snack. Because you deserve it.
Hey Snacks, it's Lala! Welcome to Snack Size. I am thrilled to be here sharing this wonderful space with you, and I'm ready to take you on an exciting journey towards finding your passion and following your dreams. So whether you're discovering new interests, setting bold goals, or just looking for a dash of inspiration, know that every moment is worth celebrating and every dream is within reach. So grab a snack and get comfortable because we're about to dive into another fabulous episode where we celebrate the beauty of being unapologetically you. Our time together starts now. Hey Snacks! Welcome back to Snack Size the podcast, and today I'm thrilled to have our guest with us for this episode, the brilliant mind behind a new transformative life coaching program called Queerly Attached. Her journey is one of incredible transformation and self-discovery. Raised in a Mormon community, she faced the challenges of coming out as a teenager, experiencing the complexities of both religious expectations and finding her own identity. After serving a mission for the church, she was sent home because, well, she's a lesbian. But that was just the beginning of her journey. In 2006, she started to embrace her true self, but her life took another path when by 2013, she found herself married to a man and mother to a son. In 2020, she discovered attachment wounds and the term anxious preoccupied. This knowledge was transformative, leading her to confront her core wounds, break away from the church, and fully step into her authentic self. Today, she is a mom, athlete, coach, and a passionate attachment theory geek. She's here to share her remarkable journey and insights on how understanding and healing attachment styles can lead to a more fulfilling life. So without further ado, let's dive into this conversation with the amazing Kyleigh Weathers and explore her queerly and securely attached journey. Let's give her a call. Hi, Kyleigh. Welcome to Snack Size.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to talk with you about attachment styles. Like many people, I became interested in attachment theory after a relationship. And once I learned more about it, understanding attachment styles is really something I wish I had known all along, because not only has it helped me to show up better in my romantic relationships, but also my friendships and my professional relationships with my coworkers as well. So this is really important information that I feel not everyone knows about, so we're going to talk about it today. But first, I want my audience to know a bit about you and your background and what inspired you to focus on this type of work.
Yeah, my name is Kyleigh Weathers. I'm the founder of Queerly Attached. And the reason why I decided to focus on attachment styles is similar to your story. Honestly, it's this fact that once you learn about attachment style, it's like being on the other side of the matrix. Like you've woken up and you can just see the pattern and you look back on your life and you're like, yep, look at these areas I self-abandoned. That's my leading point on attachment is just we're self-abandoning. And as I started to learn about attachment styles, it just clicked. It clicked that this was something that could have a huge impact on my life.
Self-abandonment is something I hear a lot about when we talk about attachment styles. What does that mean to you?
So when you think about these words that we're hearing a lot of now, right? Attachment styles is kind of a trendy thing, and people pleasing and boundaries. It's like we've all just decided, shit, man, there's actually more in these relationships and connections than what we're getting. And we want more because we want to connect. We want to be in safe, secure attachments. But because of the way that we have been taught and modeled, there are enough of us now that we realize we disconnect from self to connect to others. And that's what self-abandonment is. when you're saying no, when you should say yes, or when you're saying yes, when you should say no, or when you're walking on eggshells, or you're being stonewalled, whatever side of that anxious spectrum, and we'll talk about that, you're on, there's a moment where you're going to disconnect just to stay connected to them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's terrifying to be in rejection and abandonment state.
A lot of the work I've read on attachment theory has come from a heteronormative perspective. So I guess one of the questions I've been really excited to ask you about is what makes attachment styles unique within queer relationships?
That's a great question. And so many of our stories is about resilience and strength and coming out of this closet. And we've even been hearing that there almost isn't a closet now to be coming out of. It's good. We're moving that way. But for so many of us, there was a time of being in, and we spend so much time talking about coming out. We don't spend enough time talking about being in. And that's where so much of this attachment trauma and wounding occurred, because we are hiding. We are receiving messaging all the time that we're not enough, that our sexuality is not real, that our rights should be voted on, right? Like, these send messages and we make them mean things about us because we have to. We have to make things make sense. And we're in this external environment. It makes sense to just make it mean something about us so that we can move on.
Yeah, normally when I read things about attachment theory, it has a lot to do with how you were raised or how you attach with your parents or guardians. And what I'm hearing you say is that as queer people, some of us have the additional experience of having to deny who we are for a period of time. And that can affect attachment styles too.
Absolutely. And it ends up, for many of us, I think, especially in queer relationships, I think we end up coming out of the closet because we've entered a relationship for the first time, right? And we're bringing all this in. Obviously, it's baggage. But when we don't understand that these attachment styles are actually just strategies and behavior, then we just fall into these patterns and cycles of push-pull relationships, roller coaster dynamics. It's exhausting, and yet we stay. So why? And why aren't we talking about it?
I definitely think talking about it is so important. Like, even talking with you now, it's not the easiest thing for me to talk about. And my audience knows that I like to talk, but that's okay. At least I'm here and I'm having the conversation. I know that when I decided to do this show, I wanted to talk about the things that may be vulnerable for me, because I believe being willing to have the hard conversations is a crucial step towards growth. So, what are the different attachment styles and how do they typically develop?
Yeah. So I think about it as on the spectrum of anxiety. It's a spectrum of security. On one end, you can imagine there's a very anxious, and on the other end, there's very avoidant. So you've got anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, avoidant. And then you've got also fearful avoidant, which means you can pull from both sides of that. People who typically come up with fearful avoidant strategies may be coming from places of chaos, where maybe one day you had emotional support and then the next moment you didn't. And you never knew what to expect from these attachment figures, from these caregivers. It doesn't always begin in childhood for the majority of us, especially those of us who are parents now. I think we recognize we're literally sending these messages all the time to our children. But this also can happen in chaotic relationships. You have enough of those, that emotion plus repetition of these like high impact situations, that's going to impact you. Absolutely.
And how do attachment styles manifest in relationships? Like, what are things that may happen or maybe signs that you can look for to know that your attachment style or maybe your partner's attachment style is at play?
I think it's so interesting that a lot of people come to attachment style because they're like, what the hell is wrong with the person I'm dating? Right? And it's like, they need to work on their shit, please, because this is not going well. Right? And when we realize that this whole idea of like the one, and really, in fact, we are the one, right? When you actually turn inward and start working on your stuff, if you both can do that as individuals, what an impact to be able to show up and say, hey, you know, my natural reaction here as an avoidant person is to actually stonewall and peace out for 3 days. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not comfortable talking about my emotions. I find it difficult even to label these things because I have pushed them and suppressed them for so long. You know, that's one example of an avoidant person. An anxious person, which is what I was. I say that I'm earned secure or learned secure. It's a path. It's a practice. But in my high anxious state in those early relationships, I was a text bomber, right? If we had conflict and it went squirrely, you were not going to not hear from me until we could repair, because not being in just like fine state, calm state was just too much. And I didn't know how to self-soothe. I didn't have strategies to be able to realize, look, conflict doesn't mean that this is going to end in abandonment and rejection. Conflict doesn't mean anything other than it's just a moment of incompatibility. We can connect through it. We can contend through it. It's just a choice every time we show up at it.
You know, when I was reviewing some of your work and things about you, I did come across what you said about connecting versus contending. And that did help me to realize I've shown up in certain situations contending rather than connecting. I do think that our human intention is for connection, but I now understand that sometimes that need for connection or the feeling of a lack of connection translates into contending. But now that I understand more, I realize that showing up contending really isn't something that makes sense.
So you're right. It is. And it goes back to that modeling, right? Like we didn't see how to handle conflict. And so of course we have conflict. It is a natural part of having independent thought, right? We only have control of ourselves. And yet we're out here saying we would like to partner with one or many people, but we don't have control over how they show up in these conflicts. And a lot of times we decide they're the one and we U-Haul before we've even seen a conflict and what stress looks like in their life or how we handle stress now in partnership. We just jump all these steps because here we are. We have it. We have the connection. We have the attachment. We have love. This is what we want. But when conflict comes, why do we show up like contenders when we have said to this person, I'd like to walk with you in this way that leads to forever? Like that's bonkers. Why would you show up ready to fight? But we do it. So why? It comes back to your attachment strategies, your attachment style, the wounding that you came from. So maybe for someone who is anxious, preoccupied, there is this intense fear of abandonment and a high need for connection because that's when we are most soothed. When there's a lot of distance, when there's a lot of space. No, like miss us with that, please. Like we want to be talking all day. We better be falling asleep on the phone. It's like high contact, right? High connection. And when that is not in front of you, it's panic. And so why then do we contend? It's because we want you to get us. We need to make sense. So we over-explain and we say way too much. And maybe we end up in a panic state and now we're shaking and crying and we can't stop. And now you're saying we're needy and now you're saying we're clingy. But no, we're not. Just listen. See how it just spirals, right? And if you're dating someone who also is showing up with any avoidance strategies at that point, yeah, they're pushed and they're gone. And that's not necessarily your fault, but that's just the natural dynamic. So when we understand, hey, disappointing someone is not the end of the world, that's when you can start to get curious. And that's what's required in order to connect. You have to be curious.
Speaking of being curious, I am curious about something. So you and I are both people that understand that queer relationships are just different than heteronormative ones. And as I'm sure you have found, there isn't a ton of information about this stuff from a queer perspective. So I'm curious, in your work, have you found there are unique challenges that queer individuals or queer relationships may face in terms of these themes in attachment theory?
Yeah, I think there are a few areas. I'll speak to one that's pretty personal for me. Is just the impact of not having the parental support that you would imagine comes with a child-parent relationship. When you lose family, when you decide to step into yourself, it's really heartbreaking and it's a hard grief to hold. It's a different kind of grief because they may still be around, right? And you just don't have the support like you would hope. Me personally, I have not heard from any of my family about my efforts here with Queerly Attached. They're not checking on it, right? That's painful. I woke up so sad the other day. And when I sat with it, I realized I was feeling sad about that support. I was feeling sad about that lack. And when you start to feel a lack, that becomes a loss, and then loss easily leads us to grieving and just what ifs and wishing. When we don't accept our actual reality, which is, I don't have parents who are going to be actively supporting me in this, I can accept that. It can still make me sad, but I can process it so that I can move on through my day. And then I recognize I have a need. This cue is a signal. This little sad cue is just saying, hey, you need to connect. And so what did I do? I reached out to friends, right? And I chatted about some of my wins this week. and they hyped me up about what I'm doing. And so it's not like that's breadcrumbs that I'm going for. No, the need is connection. It's just that you assume you're going to get it from this source. And when it doesn't happen, it's a major grief. And I don't think there's enough help through that, especially when you add religious trauma on top of it.
Yes, I think that I read you used to be Mormon. Is that right?
Yeah, I left the church twice. I joke that the first time I left, it was because I just couldn't stop falling for women. And the second time I left was because it wasn't true. And so that second time stuck.
Has that part of your life experience helped you understand attachment styles?
Gosh, my entire return to the church after my marriage to my wife, she returned to the church. That's how we ended up not together. It was a literal, I'm going back to the Mormon church, so we are done. And we're barely at 3 years in a marriage in Southern Georgia. I have no one. We were in the closet. No one knew. I would have lost my job if anyone knew. This was, let's just say the time of like 2008, 2011. Okay. So, I was even married during Proposition 8 in California. We couldn't even get divorced legally when it came time for that. We couldn't even get divorced equally when it came time for that. And so what did I do? Beyond the month that I spent trying to convince her that we could have a go and that this wasn't the right idea, then my mom called me and we had an amazing talk. And it led me right back out to my little church box that was tucked away in my garage. And I had an experience that night that I decided meant I needed to go back to this church. And within the week, that's where I was. I was angry about it. I was pissed about it. But you know what I got back? I got community immediately. I had my family. And I got to stay friends with the ex, which is every lesbian's dream. But why did I do that? I did that because I was abandoned, because I felt rejected, because I didn't have support. I was an anxious, preoccupied person without connection. It absolutely makes sense that in these moments, we return to the path of familiarity, to the path that feels comfortable. That's all it is. It's a quick return for survival. It's not about thriving. It's just about how can we survive this?
I am sure coming from that experience to where you are now was a lot of healing and inner work, but it does seem like you are thriving now. So I guess my next question would be, thinking about where you're at now, how do you fulfill a need for connection in a healthier way?
So I say that I am securely single. I talk about this as if it is a practice, because for me it is. When you choose to move like you are securely attached, it's just practicing in each moment that you're given. And that begins with first learning how to regulate your emotions. And honestly, I don't even love to use the word regulate. I think it's more about just sitting with them. We get so upset and then it's like, well, no, we can't deal with this right now. And we push it, but do we ever go back to it? Right? When you learn to sit with yourself, you get to know yourself. And these emotions are just cues and messengers about needs that are not being met, or boundaries that have been crossed, boundaries that need to be set, or a boundary that needs to be upheld. So now when I get those messages, I don't look outside of myself. I've learned to self-soothe, right? I've learned that if there is a need for connection, I've built solid friendships and I've been very authentic in those and showed up secured, and I have boundaries there. I don't just text all day with people now just because we're connected and it feels good to be emotionally connected to someone. Those were things that I used to jump at just to fill those voids. But now it's not this matter of filling a void. I've integrated all these parts of me so that I can move forward as a whole, mind, body, and spirit. And it's not about who am I walking with? It's just, how is my walk? I don't want this walk to be about looking for a relationship, because if that doesn't happen at the quote end, how sad to be there feeling so sad about this thing. Like, I just decided for me that wasn't a choice that I was going to make again. So for me, my new thing is I will not self-abandon, and I don't want to date anyone who does.
So that is a great story, because I had something I wanted to ask you about attachment styles changing. The first time I did an attachment style test, it said I was an anxious attachment style. This was a couple years ago, and since then, I've done my own research on attachment theory, and I also have worked with a therapist on some of the things that we've been talking about. But to be honest, since I did the first test, I never checked in on where I was at with my attachment style. So as I was preparing to meet you and do this interview, I went to your website, which is fabulous, by the way.
Thank you.
And I did your attachment test, and the results said I was a dismissive avoidant attachment type, which surprised me. But when I read the description, I did see some things that resonated with me. So my question is, can attachment styles change? I know you mentioned that you can work towards being an earned or learned secure attachment, but I'm curious how change in terms of attachment style works.
Yeah, well, let me speak to the quiz. The quiz is meant to be fun, right? That's why part of why my first call I offer is an attachment assessment, because we just spend an hour talking about what are your patterns, what are your strategies, and then we really can dive into, okay, where does it sound like you're showing up the most on this spectrum? So, yes, absolutely, they can change. You could absolutely show up anxious in every relationship and then end up with someone who is also. And all of a sudden you're like, what the hell? This person is needy as fuck. Right? And it can push you the other way. We are drawn to the opposite. We are drawn to the opposite because perhaps the opposite looks a lot like what that initial attachment figure was like. And so I don't know if you've ever been dating anyone that all of a sudden you were like, holy shit, this is my mother, or this is my father. Like, this is me shit. That is all part of this attachment wounding.
So in general, while realizing that everyone's personal journey is nuanced, what would you say are the ways someone can change their attachment style to a secure attachment style?
I believe the first step is being willing to detach yourself from outcome. Would it really be so bad if you were the one that had to change, right? Like, let me just go ahead and make a change. And maybe the first change is just in conflict. I'm going to pause. I'm going to check in with my body and see where I'm feeling. If I'm feeling dysregulated, if I don't have the skills yet to talk through dysregulation, maybe then the next skill I learn is to say, hey, I feel that this is something that's really important for us to talk about, but I'm feeling very dysregulated right now. I love you. I want to finish this conversation. I need to step out to get regulated. I will be back at whatever time because I'm the one that's ending this. So I will be back so that we can pick this up. And that's not something that's like a weapon. I'm not just like out here like, fuck you, I'm gone. I'm narrating what's going on. So to pause and to narrate, that's going to help you so much, just for starters. And the pause is going to start to teach you that everything really is going on in the body. We have a thought, an emotion comes through, and a sensation we feel in the body. And then we make it mean something. And we get to decide what it means. We can make assumptions or we can ask for clarity. And a lot of time conflict happens because we are just making assumptions or because we go into this false reality, which is the anxiety spiral. I'm sure you're aware because you said you were also anxious at some point. It's a spiral and you end up spinning around shit that's not even true. It's all assumption. And you might lose days being upset with someone and you come back to find out that wasn't even something that they were thinking about or had said. And it's a false reality. You think about how much that impacts us to be carrying around that type of dysregulation of body.
It is a dysregulation, and we can be our own worst enemy sometimes. Just because something is going on in our head and it feels true to us in that moment doesn't exactly make it the truth. Knowing your attachment style can help you discern if it's your thoughts, your feelings, or even sometimes your projection that are affecting how you view a situation, or if it's actually true. I know knowing that has helped me a lot.
Yeah, I say often is just staying curious. And you think about how interested you are in this person or these people that you're with. You think about that level of interest. Have you ever had that level of interest about yourself? Like it really, practicing secure is like dating the shit out of yourself. It really is like allowing yourself to spend time with your thoughts. I don't know about, like, I used to listen to a ton of audiobook. I just always had something going on. I wasn't comfortable just sitting with me.
Because it's scary, sometimes.
Why? And why? Why do you think that is?
It's something I've had to explore within myself. In therapy, I learned that by nature, I'm a busybody, and that's truly what I like. But because that is who I am by nature, it does cause me to go long periods of time and not really check in with myself. So for me, my work on my journey is about finding ways to incorporate self-check-ins and self-conversation as a healthy practice in my life.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic place to start practicing secure. And you will notice the difference. You're going to notice things earlier. You're going to notice things because you're going to feel into your body and you're going to know who you are. It's uncomfortable, but it's going to lead you to a more fulfilling path and one that you actually are creating yourself. Clearly attached is 100% born of this work for me. It is born of the like showing up in these moments, pausing instead of reacting so that I can respond, right? And those choices continue to lead me in more secure ways. So in every choice that I'm given, I can look down each path, whatever is in front of me, and see if this ends in resentment or this ends with me expecting some outcome from you. That's not the choice I'm going to make, not without further conversation.
I'm wondering if you feel queer relationships avoid hard conversations more than heteronormative ones. I ask because when I talk with my close straight friends, most arguments stem from a conversation that didn't go well, but at least the conversation happened. When I talk to my queer friends, it seems to be they are willing to let things go because they're so happy to be in a relationship. So is that common for us?
I think this kind of gets into the like, I think it is a little different to date as a lesbian, obviously as it is to date as a gay man. For the gay men that I have met in this work, it sounds like a lot of avoidance and a lot of just not talking about shit, which makes sense, especially for men, right? Men especially have been taught not to feel feels and not to show it and not to seek support for shit. And so I imagine that does trend towards a very avoidant way of communicating. I think with women, I think we have this natural desire, right, to connect and we're kind of nesting all the time. And so I think what I see more in those relationships are this kind of roller coaster dynamic where we are talking through shit and maybe we're repairing, but in the next moment where we can show up better, we're not. And then we're back in the same conflict. We've repaired again. And now here's another shot and it doesn't go. So now we break up, but now we're back together. Like it's just that back and forth and back and forth. I think a lot of it has to do with scarcity mindset, right? Who are we going to date if this doesn't work out? What does it mean if this was a mistake? You know, it just becomes this fearful thing.
Oh my goodness. I thought I was the only person that thought that until just now.
No, it is prevalent in our community. That's the point. So whoever it is you're looking for, whatever list, if you make lists, I don't know, I don't make one, but I know that there are values that I want in whatever relationship I have next. So I have to make sure that those are things and values that I am bringing to relationship. If you are expecting to be with someone who can hold and feel and do these things for you, hold space while you express feeling, can you do that? Can you do that also? Right? Like these are things that we can just work on individually. And then in relationship and in connection, like you said, at work or maybe with your siblings or parents or whatever, we get to practice this. In relationship, it gets heightened, right? Because there's so much more involved, right? And there's so much more fear now because look how much we love this person. Holy shit. If we lose them, I mean, it's just darkness. You can't see beyond it.
Something I struggle with in a relationship is I know I need to stay true to myself. I also want my partner to stay true to themselves. But also in a relationship, there needs to be balance and you need to, as you said, meet them where they are at. So in a relationship, how do you feel is the healthiest way to navigate someone else's attachment style and make it work?
I'm going to say this one really point blank. The healthiest way is to not try and navigate their attachment style. The healthiest way is for you to navigate what are my boundaries that will give us a foundation of emotional safety. We say all the time, like, we're trying to make it work. It's not working. We're trying to make it work. But have we tried to make it safe? Like, can we go back to square one, please? And like, have we ever been able to hold space for each other? Like, let's show up in those ways. And so if you are with someone who isn't showing up or they are showing up in insecure strategy in the relationship, you have a boundary. There is no question of like, what am I going to do? I know my worth. And so I have a very clear boundary of the type of communication that I will engage in, the type of energy that I will engage in. It has more to do about me than it has to do about them. The hard part is though, why don't we do this? Is because it's so much easier to set a boundary than it is to uphold one. Because the problem is, nobody's out here crossing your boundaries multiple times. You're out here not upholding your boundary multiple times. Like, let's stop blame shifting this shit. Like, it's your boundary, you keep it. And so if I have said I'm not going to participate in these things because I believe that the best way to communicate is for us to be in connection, not contention, that's going to be meaning, again, me saying, hey, I'm feeling dysregulated, or, I can see that you are. And so I'm then going to have to do the hard thing, which is do something else different. Whereas before we would just stay and keep going through the spiral.
Boundaries is definitely something I've worked on in all my relationships lately, and it's hard work. But I can only say my life has gotten better once I did that work. And speaking of hard work, I really, really, really would love to know if you have a success story from someone who has worked on their attachment style.
I would love to share with you about one of my clients, and she has given me all the permission. This beautiful Black woman, 30 years old in New Jersey, in her words, got turned the fuck out by her first girlfriend. Turned the fuck out, had no clue that she was a lesbian. And then, imagine just real quick, they did not U-Haul, but hell yeah, they were talking about it. But within 6 months, it's over. And she has never experienced heartbreak like this before. Like you and I have talked about it. It's just different. And so she was just like, I this is not it. I'm not going to live like this. And she decided, I'm going to invest in myself because I've not been taught to put myself first. She's discussed with me just the culture that, and the bringing up, and that women, no, you don't get to put yourself first. It's family first. Let me give away everything so I can fulfill all these roles for you. But what about the role for yourself, right? The you that is just you when you are alone. If you're scared to be with just you, yeah, you're going to have a tough walk. This is not going to be an enjoyable experience. So this client, she ends up within 5 weeks, we're through the heartbreak, and we didn't focus at all on the ex. We focused on her. And at 5 weeks, she said, I cannot believe that I am past the heartbreak. And I said, yes. And it's because of, honestly, my last heartbreak. As I came through it, I realized the true heartbreak was the self-abandonment. That was the thing that I was having a hard time getting over, forgiving myself for. I was so judgmental of myself, of the choices that I had made in relationship, of the fact that I had stayed as long as I had, it's just this constant, how could you? Look what you've done. And when you put that curious frame on it, it's a whole other experience. So now this client, we're only 5 weeks in. Now she's like, hey, actually, I'm really liking this boundary thing. I've seen some things about my household that I'm not really enjoying. And now she's got boundaries at home. She's not cooking 3 meals a day. She's not cleaning for everyone. She's not blowing all the money on parties and birthdays to make sure that these people, stay in her life and accept her, right? Overspending, overshowing, because this was a person who had not been taught that they had worth, and they were not being shown that they had worth at home. Her life has completely changed. And this has been since February. And to hear how she's now handling conflict, she's also securely single. And again, she's received closure with this breakup that was unexpected. It did not end with a closure talk with them, but she still found closure, because the closure is about you closing up that chapter with the past you.
One of the most powerful things I've learned, and it came from author and activist Najwa Zabian, who I know I've referenced on this podcast, but it's, while you may want closure, you don't really need it to move on. And why would you trust the other person that hurt you to be a source of that closure? From what I've learned, the closure that you're looking for is inside of you. The work is to figure out how to access it within yourself. It's very common that we are taught answers are outside of ourselves, but really the most happy, successful, fulfilled people find it within themselves. And I think that knowing your attachment style is really going to help with that. This has been an amazing, amazing conversation. I know I've learned so much in our time here today, but now it is time for me to ask the question I ask all of my guests. In your opinion, Kyleigh, what is the secret to a happy and fulfilled life?
Ooh, can I take it serious and have a fun?
You sure can.
I love Broadway musicals. Honestly, if life was just filled with Broadway musicals, I would be so fulfilled.
Yes. What's your favorite?
Love it. Oh my God, favorite. I don't know. I can't. I mean, I've seen Wicked 6 times. I've seen Hamilton 3. Newsies. I've seen several. I love them all. They're all so good. So that would be, honestly, if I'm in the car alone, that's all I'm listening to.
I love it.
there's that. And I mean, not surprising, probably. You can hear, like, I really have planted this flag of like not self-abandoning. So I think that is going to be my answer, but I'm going to share it in a different way if you'll give me a minute.
Sure.
I was out of town. I was at an event. It was a queer event. There was these two gals with a typewriter, like an old typewriter. I went up to see what they were about. And they said, give us a word, give us something. We'll write you a poem. Come back in like 20 minutes. We'll have it for you. And they type it on like, fancy little paper. It's cute. Okay. So they said, what would you like it to be about? And I said, self-abandonment. And they were like, huh? And I was like, when you like disconnect from yourself to like make sure you stay with somebody else, like, just like never doing that stuff again. And they're like, oh yeah, we got you. And so I ended up forgetting about it. And I saw my poem on their Instagram the next day and I cried. I knew immediately it was mine. And I messaged and said, is there any way I can pay you to get, here? And they sent it to me. And so I love this poem. I share it as often as I can. And so I thought, you know what? I want to share it with you. So,
you didn't know this. I am a writer and the only book I have is a book of poetry. So this is absolutely in line with me and the audience. So this is great.
I love that. And do you know that this poem, honestly, I wrote 2 poems the very next day and I'm not a fucking poet. It inspired me so greatly and it unlocked something for me. I love that. Okay. So I'm going to shout them out. So this is Kyleigh J. And their social is at Merk the Moment, MERK the Moment. So my poem, a permanent address. I never should have left me. I've been searching through bus stops, scanning grocery stores and bars, looking for who I was 10 years ago. And of course I can't find me. I've been gone for quite a while, lost in acts of service, all-consuming love, polishing her plans to perfection as mine tarnish and rust. But I'm taking on a new form now. Banishing bad habits back to their hellmouth as I grip myself by my own shoulders, shake free the abandonment. I've got my own hand now, and I'm never letting go. I think that's the secret to fulfilling life.
Love that. It shows in such a short way the journey. I think it's the most beautiful and eloquent way of putting where some people may be at. I know we've both worked on ourselves, so I would like to say we're not there, but for other people they may be there. And honestly, it's even just in its form is a testament to how quickly you can get to somewhere else. And I don't think that people realize that if you just spend a little bit of time understanding what truly makes you fulfilled in a relationship, if you just make an attempt to have an understanding, you're going to be in a such better place.
Yeah. And just be careful about what you make stuff mean. If you don't know what something means, just ask for clarity. I think so much could be avoided.
Yes.
Truthfully. Or no, I think so much connection could come because think about what those conversations bring. So I love that. I have absolutely enjoyed this conversation with you.
Yes. So speaking of staying connected, for people that this is their first queerly attached experience, where can they follow you, stay connected with you? And I know you offer a lot of different services and workshops.
Yes, I do. I love that. So I have a website. Thank you for commenting on it. I'm so proud of it. Queerlyattached.net. I've got the quiz there. I've got the different ways that we can work together. I do one-to-one coaching. I am running local workshops that are selling out, which has been so exciting. This one-stop queer shop named Mockbot in Kansas City has actually reached out to me and asked me to come in-house twice a week. So I'm doing that now as well. This was always meant to be online though. So courses are coming. I'm going to be creating a Queerly Attached Academy at some point. Like this is my purpose. And you can find me at Queerly Attached on all the socials. Big learning curve on TikTok. I'm 40, not going to lie, but I'm very proud of these damn reels. And just please give me that damn follow because it is wild how much time those reels take. So
thank you so much for coming on Snack Size and sharing so much. And Snacks, this has been another episode. In the meantime, stay safe, love each other, and remember to go be fabulous. Bye.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Snack Size, the podcast. But if you're still feeling a little hungry, then head on over to snacksizepod.com and feast on all your favorite episodes. While you're there, follow me on social media. I love to stay connected. Until next time, keep it tasty. And remember, you are always the flavor of the day.